Welcome, Penn State fans, to another edition of Joe and the Fat Man. This is a special interview edition. On this podcast. We take a look at some guys, men and women from the beats of Penn State's opponents. Last week, we talked with an SMU beat reporter before Penn State's first college football playoff game. And now, since Penn State has beat SMU and will be playing Boise State in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl New Year's Eve night, we'll be talking to someone who was on strictly the Boise State beat, but now covers the entire Mountain West for Hero Sports. Ron Counts is joining me. Ron, first off, thank you for taking the time. And as you can probably guess, my first question is going to be about Ashton Jeanty. So, as somebody who has covered, covered Boise State before Jeanty became a big deal nationally, and now still covers the conference throughout Jeanty's magical, some would say Heisman-worthy season. What do you know about this guy that you feel might be lost on the people that just see the numbers or only get to watch him play occasionally?
Well, first of all, let's just talk about how phenomenal an athlete he is. I mean, this young man, I was there when he showed up as a freshman, and I've never seen a more physically imposing true freshman. I mean, he was ripped up. He was 2% body fat as an 18-year-old high school senior. He just has that freak ability. He has that it ability that guys like Barry Sanders and Reggie Bush and LaDainian Tomlinson had. He's like those guys. You always know the big play is coming, whether he's going to hit a hole and take one for 70 or he's going to hurdle a dude, or he's going to juke a guy. I mean, he's got all the intangibles. He's got great vision and amazing instincts. Amazing hops to hurdle dudes. He blocks well. He catches the ball well in the backfield. He is the best running back in the country this year. Let's face it. That's a fact. He probably should have won the Heisman. I didn't have a Heisman vote this year, but he would have got my vote. My vote. I understand how people can get enamored with Travis Hunter. He's a unicorn. How many guys play on both sides of the ball? But Ashton Jeanty has such a historic season. He's going to break Barry Sanders' record in this next game. I mean, how can you break a legend's record and not win the Heisman? It's just beyond me. But everyone knows how great an athlete he is. What they might not know is how great a kid he is, how great a teammate he is. In this NIL transfer portal era, he demanded some money on the free market last year. I mean, he had some six figures. There were some report of seven-figure offers, but he decided to stay at Boise State. He did get a package for Boise State. He's got an NIL deal for about $300,000 at Boise State, which is the largest in Boise State history. But he chose to stay at Boise State for less money because he loved the coach. He loves Spencer Danielson. He loves his teammates. He loves the community, and all his teammates glow about him. They say he's very selfless. He puts the team first all the time. He actually started a scholarship fund earlier this year that's going to cover future Boise State students. So, I mean, he's just an all-around great athlete, great human being. It's been fun to cover his career.
So if somebody told you before this season that Ashton Jeanty would have a Heisman. Some would say he should have won the Heisman, but even just finishing runner up, if someone told you he would have that type of year, would you have been surprised, or would you have said, yeah, that sounds about right?
I would have been. I was a little skeptical. So coming in, I knew he was going to have a special year. Like I said, everyone can tell he's special. I thought he could maybe touch 2,000 rushing yards this year, but to be a Heisman finalist, that's just such a rare thing for a G5 team, especially. I mean, Boise State's had one in the past. Kellen Moore in 2010, he finished fourth in voting. So Ashton Jeanty is the highest since then. And you look at 8 of the past 9 Heisman, or 8 of the past 10 Heisman winners now, and they've been quarterbacks from power conferences. The Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC. So it's just so rare for a running back to win it. It's so rare for a G5 player to win it. But he was very worthy of that honor. I mean, he definitely should have been in the top 4 as he was. And again, in my opinion, he should have won it.
So a lot of Penn State fans, I think, are going into this game with the mindset of, okay, if we handle number two, everything else is going to work itself out. But this notion that people have that Boise State is kind of a one-man band, do you think that's fair?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's very short-sighted, and it's why I disagree with people that think that Penn State's just going to come out and roll Boise State. I'm not saying Penn State won't win the game. They're very capable of winning the game, but Boise State has a chance to win the game for 3 simple reasons. One, they run the ball very well. We talked about Ashton Jeanty. We know him. They have a very experienced O line, and the running backs behind Ashton Jeanty are very good. Dylan Riley, John Braze Dubar, very, very talented running backs. Number two, Boise State plays really good defense. They're one of the best sack teams in the country this year. I think they're number 2 behind Mississippi State. Their secondary is really improved. Their linebackers are very, very good. And number 3, Boise State doesn't make a lot of mistakes. They don't turn the ball over that much. Look at their quarterback, Maddox Madsen. He's got more than 20 touchdown passes and fewer than 5 interceptions on this season. He doesn't make mistakes. They protect the ball well. So in a playoff environment, we see it every year in the NFL, right? When it's late in the season, the weather is iffy. The teams that run the ball, play good defense, and don't make mistakes can win games. And Boise State can very much do that.
So, a few hours, not even probably about an hour before this recording, I don't know if you were on the Zoom call with Boise State's offensive players slash Dirk Cutter, but Maddox Maxon said that Cage Casey he feels is the best tackle in college football. For Penn State fans who don't know very much about Cage Casey, is that a case of, a quarterback is propping up one of his teammates and kind of take it with a grain of salt, or does he actually have a case as college football's best offensive tackle?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit high praise, is that he's the best in college football. But Cage Casey's a very talented, very capable young man. You're talking about a young man that started every game last season at left tackle as a redshirt freshman. He started every game for the past 2 seasons there. He's played really, really well. He's an all conference guy. He's had some All American honors. He's a very, very strong kid. I mean, he came in as a true freshman and was one of the top 4 or 5 on bench and squat on the team, right away. So he's a weight room warrior. His teammates love him. He's got really good footwork. So he's an up and comer. I mean, I'd say over the next 2 years he could become the best left tackle in college football. To say he's there right now, I think that's a little bit of high praise.
So Penn State's defensive ends, everybody knows about Abdul Carter, but even aside from him, Dirk Cutter said that they have 4 defensive ends that could start most places in the country. Do you feel that Cage Casey is at the level yet? You mentioned him as an up and comer, but is he a guy that could neutralize Abdul Carter if he ends up one on one with him?
Yeah, I mean, Penn State just somehow always has a freak athlete at linebacker. I mean, go all the way back to LeVar Arrington, right? But Abdul Carter's a guy that is an absolute freak. He's going to be a top 6 or 7 pick in the draft for a reason. Cage Casey contend with him? We'll see. That's really going to be one of the main questions in this game. Can Casey and the other tackles really defend that pass rush? Abdul Carter's a man. He is a grown man. Cage Casey is very good, but he's going to have to be on his game. And you mentioned the depth there. Dirk knows what he's talking about, because when you look at Power 4 versus G5 rosters, depth in the trenches is always the difference. When you look at teams, even Boise State up until the last couple of years, their second and third defensive lines were huge drop-offs from their starters. Penn State's got those second and third guys there. There's not much of a drop-off there. So if Boise State can contain those edges, they can contend in the game. If not, it could be a long day for Maddox Madsen.
Generally, when you look at Penn State from the outside, what are some things that we talked about Carter in the defensive line, but what are some other things that stick out to you about this team?
I think the whiteouts, the Happy Valley, that huge stadium, everyone knows about that. Obviously, this is a neutral game, but I mean, when I look at Penn State, there's always NFL guys on that roster. I mean, even on years when Penn State's not at its best, they've got 3, 4, 5 NFL guys on that roster. And the same is true this year. We talked about Abdul Carter. He's an obviously top 10, top 15 pick at worst. Drew Aller, I think, can be there in a year or two. They've got 2 really good running backs. The line has been coming along this year. So I think when when you play Penn State, it's going to be a nitty gritty, dirty game. They're going to run the ball. They're going to hit some big plays. They're going to play good defense. So you got to come out and out tough them in a sense.
So Carter's obviously the main guy everybody talks about defensively. Tyler Warren, same type of deal offensively. Teams have been keying on Tyler Warren almost all season, and nothing has really seemed to work. What is Boise State's path to maybe not stopping Tyler Warren, because that's really hard, but at least neutralizing him to where somebody else has to beat them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a scheme fit. I think you're going to see Boise State come out in a lot of nickel. They're going to play a lot of 5, even 6 DB sets in this game, assuming they can control the line enough to run the ball. I think look at a guy, Shea Oladipo at Boise State. He's their nickel cornerback, really solid tackler, physical guy, really good man-to-man guy. I can see him kind of shadowing Warren a lot this year. There's some really, really good safeties. Ty Benefield is one really big kid, 6'2", long arms. He'll get in there and contend with Tyler Warren some, but Tyler Warren is the best tight end in the country. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's going to take a group effort. They're going to have to get some help from the linebackers. They're going to have to chip him coming off the line to mess up those timing routes. But I would watch Shea Oladipo. I think he's going to find a way to kind of shadow Tyler Warren a bit this weekend or next week, excuse me.
Yeah, so Spencer Danielson was telling us about how Boise State really embraces this underdog role, and obviously, that kind of sounds cliche from the outside, but looking at Boise State's history, he's when he said this program was built on being an underdog, he wasn't kidding because obviously, the day that Boise State got on the map was beating Oklahoma in the same stadium that they're going to be in next week in the Fiesta Bowl. But at the same time, as somebody that covers the Mountain West, do you think there's any pressure there, knowing that Boise State is flying the flag for the entire conference? They're really the only Mountain West team a lot of people think about. Maybe UNLV's there too. But if Boise State doesn't at least keep it close with Penn State, that's gonna have that's not going to be a great look for the Mountain West. So do you think any pressure comes that way?
Yeah, I mean, it is so fitting that you mentioned this being them playing in the Fiesta Bowl because you can argue that three of Boise State's biggest wins in program history have been in the Fiesta Bowl: '07 against Oklahoma, 2010 against TCU, and 2014 against Arizona. Really big wins for this program. Now, whether or not there's some pressure on Boise State's shoulders, I think there is, but not really on the conference level for the Mountain West. I mean, Boise State has been the flagship program for the Mountain West for the past decade. I mean, they're really the only show in town. UNLV has come on the last couple of years. San Diego State has had its moments. Fresno State's had their moments, but nobody in the Mountain West has been as consistent as Boise State. Where the pressure comes from is with Boise State now making that jump to the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 really wants to be seen as a big boy Power Five conference, even though they're basically just raiding the Mountain West. They want to be seen as a big boy conference. So Boise State's got to come out and show they're a big boy team. Show they can play with the Big Ten. Show they can play with those blue bloods. That's where the pressure comes. So you're right. If they come out and if Boise State lays an egg, it's going to really look bad on the whole conference. But if Boise State comes out and keeps us close, maybe even upsets Penn State, I think it's huge for the conference, huge for their confidence going forward, and maybe it even lands the Pac-12 a couple more members, Memphis, Tulane being out there.
What do you think Boise State winning this game? Because obviously the Oklahoma game was huge, but that they didn't have a chance to win a national championship there. If they beat Penn State, at the very least, they're going to be a Final Four team, which has never happened. I guess Cincinnati did it, but everybody kind of thinks of Cincinnati as a major college football program. But if they're able to get into the Final Four and beat Penn State, what do you think that does for the perception of mid-major college football?
It's huge. I already think, with the transfer portal in the transfer portal era, the gap between G5 and P4 talent wise has already shrunk. Now there's all these other gaps in terms of athletic budgets and things like that are worlds apart. But talent wise, the gap there has already shrunk. If Boise State can beat Penn State, for one, in my opinion, it's the biggest win in program history. Because like you said, it's their first chance to play for a national championship. Number two, it just further diminishes that idea that we need this super league, that the Big 12 and the SEC and all these are so far apart from everyone else. They're not that far apart on the football field. In terms of money, in terms of TV ratings, yeah, they're far apart. But on the football field, that divide is shrinking. And if Boise State can win this game, I think it shrinks even further.
So as somebody that covers the Mountain West, are you already kind of bracing yourself for what, obviously you're in the media, you're not a fan per se, but as somebody that knows that conference better than most people do, are you kind of bracing yourself for what people might say about Mountain West football if Boise State doesn't have a good showing against a Big Ten team?
I am, and we've already seen a lot of that. We saw it with the arguments about who should get into the playoff this year. Strength of schedule arguments. Has Boise State played a good enough competition to beat out a 2 or 3 loss SEC team? That conversation is going to become a lot harder for Boise State if they lay an egg. So I think you're right. There will be some people that trash the conference more, but the reality is that there's just going to be some people that never look at G5 football the same. They're never gonna think that those teams belong with the big boys. They're never gonna think that they're ever gonna belong there. So there's no convincing them. I think Boise State's gonna make a statement this weekend. I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I mean, I'm going to go out there and say Boise State wins this game. Now, does Boise State blow out Penn State? Not by any stretch of the imagination. But Boise State plays good enough defense, runs the ball well enough that they can keep this close in the fourth quarter. And if they can do that, Ashton Jeanty can win any game in the fourth quarter. So that's what it's gonna come down to. If this is a 7 or 10 point game going into the fourth quarter, Boise State has a real shot to win it.
I'm gonna follow up on that in a little bit because
Sure.
I do want
Sorry.
to hear more about that prediction, which is going to interest a lot of Penn State people. But talking about Spencer Danielson, obviously this is one of the younger head coaches in college football. He's been at Boise State a long time. Would beating Penn State and getting into the Final Four, maybe not this year. Obviously, everybody's kind of figured out who their head coach is going to be. But down the road, what does a win in this game make it harder for Boise State to keep Spencer Danielson from one of the bigger schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, money talks, and you know what walks. I mean, it's just you look at some of these coaches, and just look last year. Boise State's offensive coordinator Bush Hamden was making, I believe, around $500,000 at Boise State. He goes and takes the job at Kentucky, and he's making 1.5 million right off the bat. So I mean, Spencer Danielson, if he wins this game, he's gonna be in demand no matter what because he's a great coach. He was absolutely the right hire. There were more experienced guys in the pool when Spencer got this job. Bronco Mendenhall, Jeff Choate, both those guys were interviewed and didn't get the job. Spencer got this job because he has the love and the sport of the team. These kids trust him. They want to play for him. And in this day and age of college football, that's more important than ever. Because in the NIL transfer portal era, if kids don't like a coach, they're just jumping. They're jumping ship and they're leaving. Spencer Danielson has kept that from happening. Excuse me. Outside of Taylor Green, who went to Arkansas, and Eric McAllister, who went to TCU, they really haven't lost any impact players to the transfer portal since Spencer took over. And that's because he has the trust of the locker room. Andy Avalos got fired because he lost the locker room. So Spencer was the right hire. I think if he wins this game, he becomes, his name becomes even more valuable. Maybe he gets lured away by a, $4 or $5 million a year offer. Who could blame him? But yeah, I think for right now, for this moment, he's the right coach for Boise State.
If you had to guess, how much longer do you think he's going to be in Boise?
It depends on what happens, on Tuesday. Really, if they win that game, like we said, he's gonna get a lot of offers. I think Spencer's a guy who could surprise some people. He's a guy who really he talks the talk. You see it. Every interview he thanks Jesus before he answers the question. He's a guy that really walks the walk and talks the talk. He believes what he says. He lives it. So he could stay there. Maybe he loves Boise State enough to stay there for 4 or 5 years and really become that next great coach at Boise State. He's following such a great lineage of Chris Peterson and Brian Harsin and Dan Hawkins and Dirk Cutter. Maybe he wants to be that guy. Maybe he will. I think if they win on Tuesday, his name, gets thrown out there a lot more. Maybe he gets a big offer. But I would say, if I had to guess right now, at least 2, 3 years he's going to be there because the players love him. He loves the players and he doesn't want to give up on them.
Yeah, you said earlier that you think Boise State's going to pull what would be one of the bigger upsets in college football playoff history when you get down to it. But how do you see this game going? Like, if Boise State's going to pull an upset, like, is it going to be tight throughout? Like, how do you kind of see just the game playing out?
Yeah, I think for one, they're going to trust Ashton Jeanty. They got to, I've said this all season long. If a defense can hold Ashton Jeanty to less than 20 carries in a game, they have a really good chance of winning that game. But if Jeanty gets to 25 or 30 carries, the Boise State's win percentage goes way, way up. So Boise State's got to trust Ashton Jeanty. You've also got to understand, we've mentioned his name a couple times in the interview. Dirk Cutter is the guy calling the plays for Boise State. This is the guy who's been a head coach in the NFL, an OC in the NFL. He's worked with guys like Matt Ryan. He knows what he's doing. So he's not going to put this whole game plan on Ashton. While Ashton's going to carry a lot of the workload, he's going to have some other little cards up his sleeve. So I think Ashton Jeanty running the ball is going to be key. Boise State not turning the ball over is also going to be key. And then Boise State's defense kind of forcing some turnovers, some mistakes. That's what's always important when you're in that underdog role. You got to pressure the quarterback, which Boise State does really well this year, and you got to create some turnovers, and then you got to capitalize. So run the ball, don't make mistakes. That's simple, right?
All right. You have a final score prediction?
Yeah, I'm going 30-27 Boise State.
All right. There you have it. Is there anything else you'd like to add on that we should be thinking about for next week?
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is going to be a great game. It's so fitting that these teams are meeting in the Fiesta Bowl, right? They're both undefeated in Fiesta Bowls. I believe Penn State's got 7 or 8 wins in their history. So I think it's going to be a great game. You're going to see a lot of future NFL guys out there. So just be prepared for an awesome one.
All right, we're on counts. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey, no problem.